Okay, welcome back, economists. We're here for our third video about market equilibrium, and specifically in this one, we're going to talk about the price mechanism. So when we use that phrase, a price mechanism, what we are referring to is exactly how the price equilibrium changes when there's been a shift of supply or a shift of demand. And the reason why supply and demand is such a great and efficient system is because this price mechanism is a very efficient way to allocate resources. And there's three reasons for that. The first of which is prices are one of the most powerful pieces of information that we have, right? Or another way to say that is prices have a signaling function and that they send information out into the world, okay? So anytime you've seen a price for something change, that's telling you some information and it's helping you make some decisions. Okay, so our second one is an incentive function. When a price changes, that changes the behavior of a consumer and a producer, right? And finally, and probably one that often gets overlooked, is that prices have a rationing function, right? To ration a good or a service means that you are limiting its consumption so that it sort of can be consumed at a sustainable rate and people don't go out and panic buy things, right? So for these three functions, this explains why markets are so efficient. Now, they're not perfect, right? You can probably think of some examples of markets that are not functioning very well. So for example, in the United States, for the past few months, because of this whole coronavirus thing, it's been difficult to find some toilet paper, right? That's an example of a market where the price mechanism didn't work very well. But these three functions that I'm about to explain here, they go a long way to help substantiate the claim that market-based policies, anytime the government enacts some kind of policy that uses the forces of supply and demand to achieve a goal, that's often going to be more effective than a government policy that just sort of mandates something, okay? So let's first get into this idea of a signaling function here, right? So we know that prices send information out into the world. So for this example, we're going to use shares of Amazon. So if you are an investor, pretty much any investor out there worth their salt, they watch what's going on with Amazon stock. They're one of the largest companies on the planet, both in how they're valued and how much money they make. So during this whole pandemic, Amazon has become an incredibly powerful business. And before the pandemic hit, sort of in late February, Amazon's shares, right, little pieces of ownership of that company, were trading for around $2,150 if you wanted to buy one share. So what's happened to Amazon's shares, right, during this pandemic? Well, everyone sort of realized that Amazon's profits and their revenue were really going to increase because people couldn't go to stores and they had to buy things from home. So a lot of people have gone out and bought shares of Amazon, and our demand curve is going to increase here. Okay, so we have an increase of demand. Now, if you've watched our previous videos about supply and demand, you know that our price of PE1 is not going to stay there. So this price is going to change because here we have the problem of a shortage. There just aren't enough shares of Amazon to buy at this price. This is how many people want to buy at that price. This is how many are supplied. Now, what will happen is the producers, right, the people who make up the supply of Amazon shares, will realize that they need to raise their prices, right? So the price will go up, and it'll eventually go up to the point where we have a new market equilibrium if you are an investor in Amazon's shares. And as of the time of this video, one share of Amazon has appreciated from $2,150 before the pandemic, and shares are now trading at higher than $3,500 per share. Okay? So these shares have become about a third more valuable, or maybe 50%, right? Somewhere in there. So a huge jump in the price for Amazon shares, and that sends some information out into the world, right? That tells you if you are a potential investor and you make up the demand for Amazon shares, you'd better be prepared to pay a pretty high price for those shares because it's a highly valued company, right? And it also tells the people who supply the shares, right? Maybe people who already own them and are maybe thinking about selling those shares for a nice little profit. Well, maybe now might be a good time to sell, because that's a huge price increase in just a few months, and if you sell out then, you might be able to make some money, okay? So our prices send information out in the world. That's one of their biggest functions, is they give us information. If the price for something is going up, that usually means it's more valued, it's more sought after, it's more scarce, and the opposite is obviously going to be true if the prices for that go down. Okay? So another example here that I'm going to use, a similar market where there's been a really dramatic increase in demand, is the market for ammunition. And different types of bullets, you either can't find them right now, or the price for them has really gone up, right? There have been some security concerns lately, both about the coronavirus and some other political stuff going on. And so different producers of both guns and ammunition are seeing like record increases for their products that they sell. So again, we're going to show a healthy increase in demand for guns and ammunition. And again, our initial price of PE1 is not going to stay where it is. We know that we're going to connect this over to our new demand curve there, and this is our new quantity demanded. So at a price of PE1, this is the quantity supplied, this is the quantity demanded. But again, we know that our manufacturers of ammunition and of guns, they will catch on to this pretty quickly. And since more people are interested in buying guns and ammunition, these producers have an incentive to produce more once they raise their prices. So at this price, we have excess demand. However, once producers of guns and ammunition raise their prices, that provides them an incentive to make more than where we are here at QE1. Okay? So when producers raise their prices, from the law of supply, we can know that as prices increase, so does the quantity supplied. The incentive there for producers is to make more money once we get to here, and they can raise their prices. Okay? So as a result of our magic of markets, we're going to have a new quantity equilibrium where a greater number of guns and ammunition are going to be sold, and they're going to be sold for a higher price. Now, this higher price is not only good for the producers, I think it's also good for consumers as well, because a higher price helps ration a product. If we had a lower price for guns and ammunition, then at a price of PE1, again, we had a shortage, right? So that higher price stops people from going out and like bulk buying thousands and thousands of rounds of ammunition that they probably will never need to use, right? Or going and buying all of these guns that they probably don't have a use for, right? So in that way, a higher price helps to preserve different products to be sold to people who can really afford to buy them, and it it disincentivizes and it helps ration away the people who are trying to buy that in bulk, right? So the quantity demanded will increase or decrease along our demand curve because higher prices help stop people from bulk and panic buying. The people who really need to buy guns and ammunition are probably going to be willing to pay that higher price. The people who are panicking and trying to buy as much as they can when they can get it, those people are probably going to be turned off by a higher price. Okay, so here we go. The magic of markets here, why they're so efficient. They're not always perfect. They send information out into the world about how scarce something is. They incentivize consumers and producers to change their behavior, and it also stops panic buying of different goods and services to make sure that we have a stable market for things, and that's why in most capitalist economies there's such an availability of different types of goods and services to buy at a reasonable price. All right, thanks guys.